Hey, it's Pat here, and in this video, we're going to talk about your content. And it doesn't matter what kind of content you're creating, whether it's something long form or short form, whether it's on a podcast, a blog, or a YouTube video, or even a clubhouse, whatever it is that you're thinking about doing in terms of creating content for others to consume in some way, shape, or form. We need to know what form that content takes in the manner of parts. It shouldn't just be one giant essay or one giant sort of monologue. Yes, it can feel like that, but if you consider the parts that it's made up of, you can have a better likelihood of having engagement, having people share it, having people just retain on the page, meaning getting all the way through. So that's our goal today. We're going to talk about different parts of your content, how to approach it, how to set it up, and how to know if it's working or not. That and more today on the income stream, day 359, I think, 58. We're very close to a year. Thank you so much for being a part of this stream with me. Here we go.
This is the income stream to help you achieve your dream. All while we keep it clean. This is the income stream. It's the kind of show where you can come and go, but then you leave inspired with no fee required. The income stream with Pat Flynn.
You know, I was thinking after the year, when we maybe start going weekly, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just taking a little bit of a break and not doing this daily anymore. But I'm gonna miss like hearing that song. I know a lot of you have gotten it stuck in your head a couple times, so I apologize about that. But here we are. We are indeed live. What's up, Mr. Camera Junkie, GTO, Stephanie, Temmie? We got Chris in the house and Fit Over 50, Elton. So many amazing people. Just thank you again for showing up today. You are incredible. And yeah, big day on Monday. Monday, a 365-minute stream. That's going to be Monday, March 15th. Come join. You don't have to stick around the entire time, but we'll have some fun prizes, giveaways. We'll have a schedule, an agenda, and probably some fun surprises too. So anyway, let's talk about content. Now, if you just approach content with a blinking cursor, right? That blinking cursor that's popping up on your Google Doc or your Microsoft Word or WordPress, or if you have a camera and you're like, okay, I'm ready to create content. Let's hit record and go, and we'll see what happens. You're already losing. You do not want to get to the point, unless it's just more social media where you can sort of fly by the seat of your pants and make things up on the go without really any risk of losing time. And of course, not everything on social media is going to be a hit or go viral. In most cases, things aren't like that anyway. And that's okay, but that's not the kind of content we're talking about. We're talking about content that you want to put some heart and soul into, some time and effort and sweat, so that it does the work for you over time. Ideally, we want to get to the point where when we create content, we are as confident as can be with at least knowing that we've given itself the best chance to reach as many people as possible with just creating that content alone. Yes, you can do more and should do more marketing. We'll talk more about how to get people to find your content tomorrow, most likely. But today we're talking about the creation of the content, and a lot of the legs of some content happens even before you start writing, even before you start recording your video or audio. And it starts with first thinking about the transformation of this piece of article or whatever it is that you're creating, right? You want to think about, well, what is the purpose of this? But I like to rephrase that, what is this purpose? Because a lot of times we go, okay, well, what do we want it to do for us? When in fact, who are we actually creating content for? We're creating content for somebody else. So when we think about the end in mind, somebody else reading, watching, or listening, and how we want them to feel, how we want them to come away with that piece of content, then we're going to be more likely to then reverse engineer that feeling, that thought, that discovery, that new direction, that confidence, that motivation, whatever it is that the end game is for that particular piece of content. We can reverse engineer the different parts and pieces to go along with that. So that's always where I start. My favorite thing to do is use Post-it notes to manage this process for me, right? You've seen me talk about Post-it notes before, and Post-it notes are my favorite tool in the world. Yes, they can be recycled, even with the glue behind them, but I've discovered that because I use quite a bit of them. But the reverse engineering is very key. So one thing to do is take a Post-it note, maybe of a different color, like dark blue, and write down that transformation. If you cannot write that down or you haven't thought about it yet, you're not ready to think about creating that content, right? Now, the thing doesn't have to be a new discovery. It can be just feeling motivated. It can be being entertained. It doesn't have to necessarily be a new thing that they learn, but we need to know sort of what we want the final outcome to be. Write that down, on a piece of paper. And again, if you can't write it down, we're not ready yet. We need to know where we're going before we need to know which direction to take, right? It's like putting the address in your navigation menu in your car, your Jeep or Tesla or whatever. How does the car know where to go unless you know where you're trying to get to? So let's start with the end in mind, reverse engineer from there, okay? Hopefully I've beat that message enough into you for you to understand that. So then we can start brainstorming. We use another color, maybe light blue, or maybe one of my favorite colors, chartreuse. The reason why I love chartreuse is because when I was a kid, I used to go fishing with my dad and use chartreuse trout fishing bait all the time. That was a short story. But short story or long story, doesn't matter. We're having some fun here. And if you could do me a quick favor and hit the like button really quick as we dive into this content, that'd be really amazing. Yesterday, I think we hit 144 likes even before the stream ended, which was pretty amazing. So yes, begin with the end in mind. Then it starts to get a little bit easier. So you take your chartreuse, doesn't have to be chartreuse, take your lime green Post-it notes and start just brainstorming from where people are at now. That's over here. I have to do it because it's opposite. This is my right, but this is actually your left. So when I start something that I'm saying, I have to start over here, which is opposite. So please excuse me if my hands keep going like this, right? So start brainstorming anything that you can based on where people are at and now that you know where you want people to go or get to. Just anything in between in no particular order. Because here's the thing, our brains, it's an amazing tool, but it's not the best at organizing thoughts and information as they are being generated. What we need to do is lay them out all on the table so we can then understand the different pieces and parts that make up this particular piece of content. And yes, you can use this for blog posts. You can use this for podcasts. You can use the same strategy for writing books. The stuff that you brainstorm is this mess that we now can organize. And it's really cool because what happens is we start to actually see clusters and groups and things that can actually be combined. When we start to create hierarchies and groupings, we can start to imagine the order of these groups and how we need to take people from, again, where they're at to where we want them to go. Then we might be able to find some holes. Now that we see, okay, here's step 1 and step 2, but I don't know, we're not quite at step 5 yet, so let's figure out what's in between here. What happens between 2 and 5? Okay, here's 3 and 4. And this is an amazing thing that we can do just to help people and help ourselves when it comes to the content, because ultimately, let's fast forward a bit. Now, if you have the sea of mess of Post-it notes organized now, you now have in front of you specific notes that tell you what part to write and when they should be in there. You can even use this opportunity to focus. Like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one right here. And I'm going to focus on that Post-it note and nothing else matters because that's the part I'm focusing on right now. So again, this is the approach to content creation. I'm going to talk about specific parts that are going to be relevant to some of you and maybe not relevant to others. But we're going to talk about different things that you can do within your content to keep people engaged, to keep people listening, watching, or reading all the way through. But I just wanted to approach this from a high level, a planning perspective, so that we can please the people who perceive our paper. I don't know, I thought it was going to be good, but then it fell off. Anyway, this is how we get people to engage. We first have to have this planning approach to our content. Now, I'm also going to tell you that I don't do this right before I publish. I do this well in advance. So let's say, for example, that I have a blog post that's going to come out in a month. I don't wait till I'm ready to write to think about this. I have specific moments during the month where I have planning sessions. And in those planning sessions, I'm doing this strategy with the Post-it notes for 4, 5, 6 different pieces of content. Now, of course, if you're doing a podcast interview, I'm not necessarily planning where I want that interview to go in terms of what questions am I going to ask, because the prep that I do for a podcast is I want to actually not learn too much to a point where I'm actually far removed from my audience, but actually more in the shoes of my audience. But I still want to know, obviously, who I'm speaking to and what they're about and the stories that perhaps they can tell, again, with an end goal in mind for where do I want people to end up after doing this interview. And then I reverse engineer the questions, and that's my job as an interviewer in a podcast or in a video interview, to lead people into that direction, right? That's how we get there. Good afternoon. What's up? Nice. I really like that, says B-Roy. What up, Pat, says Carlos. Thank you. At Reef, what's up? Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you for that. High five, my friend. Shiba dog saying good job while raising his thumb. The descriptions to these stickers are so funny. It's like my favorite thing. Thank you, @Reef. Oh man, late. Haha, was here earlier. No worries, Peasant Uprising. I appreciate you. Okay, so let's keep talking. So we've talked about planning. We've talked about the idea of starting with the end in mind. We've talked about the idea of brainstorming the parts in between where they're at now versus where we want them to go. Now let's talk about the different components within and the different kinds of things that we can use within a piece of content. And we're going to go platform by platform here, if that makes sense. Now, Jarvis, hey. Sorry, we have a guest today. He was chilling, and then he got all curious. Hold up. Hold up. Jarvis, come say hi to everybody. You thought you could go get into my stuff. All right. So if you're creating a video, thank you, Jarvis, because this is going to demonstrate my first point here. If you're creating a video, one thing to keep in mind is that, especially on YouTube, people have very, very short attention spans. So we need to feed that. And one thing that you can do is what's called pattern interrupts. So outside of the more general topics of what it is your video is about, you can include different moments where things switch up. And I think on videos specifically, especially on YouTube, you need to switch it up every once in a while. If it's just a talking head for 10 minutes, it's not going to do as good of a job. It could still be great content. It could still help people, but it's not going to be as great as if it was actually broken down into different parts, right? So there's a lot of different parts of videos, and within those parts or switching between one part to another, or even within a part itself. You okay? Are you embarrassed? You're cool. You can create pattern interrupts to essentially reset the viewer, right? I just reset you. I was going into the content, and then Jarvis was like, yo, pattern interrupt. And I was like, oh, good idea. So I brought him up here, and now here he is, and we're just chilling, right? And now you're reset because now I can restart. Now, obviously, you don't want to do that all the time, but this is a very common strategy that I've seen a lot of YouTubers do when it comes to how they position their content. They create pattern interrupts. They change up the screen every once in a while. They might often maybe offer a surprise or something like that can help people sort of reset. That's just a little tactic that you can use specifically on YouTube to mix it up. But even in blog posts, even in podcast episodes, having different segments, having different parts of that thing can go a very long way. Let's take a blog post, for example. Imagine the difference between a fully written, just one giant sea of text versus different components of a blog post, each of which have their own subheader, perhaps an image in there, perhaps even an embedded video within it, maybe a chart to support that content. If you start thinking about this longer form piece of content and the different ways you can chop it up so it's a little bit easier to consume, it's going to be a lot easier to consume, right? So I hope that makes sense. Sorry, was the sound effect really loud? Sorry about that. I don't have my headphones on, so I apologize. I'm not going to push that button anymore. Heartbeat interrupt. Yes. So one thing to keep in mind is if you do surprises, test the audio first. Okay. So I wanted to make sure we understood that from a real time perspective. And again, I apologize about that. Okay. You okay, Jarvis? Okay, he's cool. My apologies. Okay. The other thing about this is you're not always going to get it right, and learn from your mistakes. You keep moving forward. Okay, so let's keep sticking around on video. Many of you have heard my tiptoe strategy. I'm going to reiterate this because this is important. This is all about the beginning of a video. The beginning of a video should be made up of different parts that can connect to the title and allow us for the click and the stick strategy to work for us. This is so important. Now, the click is obviously really important, the thumbnail and the title. But after that, after people click, what should happen? Number one, the start of the video should connect to the title. It should be very obvious that a person is watching the video that they are meaning to click on and watch and consume. It can be the start of a story. It can be imagery and visuals that relate to the thing that people clicked on. Or it could be so as simple as to the I in Tiptoe literally saying, in this video, XYZ. This is the Mr. Beast approach to videos that he just kind of gets right into it. In this video, you're going to learn this, this, and this, and this. Now, here's the other thing that you can include, especially if you are a creator and you're competing against other creators about information. You want to share proof. If you're sharing information in this video, before you share the information, share proof that you know what you're talking about, that what this is, what the thing the person is going to learn is actually real and it works, and that perhaps you've done it too. Even if you haven't done it, show proof that other people have done it too, because you want to sort of what I like to call future pace. You want to show people that what it is that they are going to get into is actually worth doing, and here are the results that can happen, right? Forgiven. Thank you, Justin. Sorry about that again. Sounded like a bad CD skipping. Huh. Okay, I think I know what happened. The sound effect wasn't the issue. It was maybe some bad feedback with some other audio things on that particular scene. So again, sorry about that. Because you said like a shock. It was probably like kind of like that, right? Okay. Thank you for letting me know. I'll fix that outside of live next time. I got to fix it for Monday though, because I'm going to use that a lot, and I don't want to abuse your ears a lot. That's the truth. Okay. So we talked about the connection to the title. In this video, XYZ, especially if it's informational, showing proof. Now, what else? Now we can tease what's happening next. Every good video on YouTube will show people a glimpse of or speak to what is coming and why this is important, right? So I even teased in this video, hey, in this video, I'm going to share with you specific things that you can do within your content, no matter what content platform it is, to hold people on for longer. That is the benefit. That is a tease of what's coming. I haven't revealed any of that stuff, but it's coming. And you got to obviously close that loop once you open it. Then, if possible, talking about the objections. Again, this is a very content-specific type of approach, but talking about objections people are going to have immediately. For example, if I tell you in this video, we're going to talk about email marketing for your business and how to implement it in a day, right? So there's a little bit of a time-based thing. I would rather, before I start getting into email marketing, say, hey, you might have some thoughts about email marketing and think it's not worth your time. You might think that you have to be sleazy and aggressive in order to make sales on your email. Well, make sure you watch all the way through, because I'm going to show you how that's not true. And in fact, one email I sent here actually not only got responses like, thank you, this is incredible, but has also earned $3,000, right? So again, I'm just structuring the beginning of the video to hold people through, because on YouTube specifically, if you can hold people through watching the video longer, YouTube will reward you. They will literally send it out. If you do this well, when you log into your Creator Studio, it will literally tell you this video is getting watched for longer, which is helping it be recommended by YouTube stronger or something like that. So something of that nature. We saw that in a recent video on the Deep Pocket Monster channel, and it was awesome. I think the video, it's interesting because it's like, oh, this video is holding people for longer, so we're going to send it out to more people, and therefore it has more view time. But it has more view time because it's being sent out to more people. It's like really cool and self-perpetuating once you get this right? So that's for video. So let's talk about blogs. How do we start a blog post? The hook is in the first paragraph, right? We need to tell people why this matters to them. Too many times I see blog posts, again, mainly informational, but even personal ones that are about you. I think we still have to give people a reason to invest their time in consuming this content. And if we don't offer that up front, like people are going to leave. We cannot expect that we are so special that no matter what we write, people are going to read all the way through. You have to convince them, and you have to make it about them. One particular thing that works across all podcasts, all YouTubes, and all blog posts is using the word you rather than you guys. This works really, really well. And in fact, you might remember, let me know if you do, Squeaks Game World, who we reviewed on on Sunday. He's already implemented a lot of what he learned and what he's been taught here in that YouTube channel review, and the results speak for themselves. He is implementing and he's getting results, and you're seeing it in the numbers, and we're seeing it in the comments, right? People are connecting more with his content because he switched from, hey, you guys, welcome back, to, hey, thank you for watching this video. If you are an investor or a collector in Pokemon, you need to watch this video because blah, 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 right? So that goes a very, very long way. And he's been doing excellent. I love when people, he's implementing just-in-time learning, right? Which I talk about all the time, which is if you're going to learn stuff, learn about the thing that's like most important to you right now, the next priority, and then not just learn, but actually implement. And that's exactly what he's doing. That's something that I think has gotten me ahead of the game, and for sure is going to help Squeaks and anybody else who learns from that too. So Brandon says, yeah, Squeaks Game World has made the changes. And what do you think about that, Brandon? I saw you comment, but I'd love for you to share how you feel the content is different now as a result of doing that. Yeah, I noticed he started doing your suggestions. Yeah. It's pretty cool. He even did a video that was a little bit more storytelling, which was pretty awesome. And I really like that. A little bit different, but you have to try different things to see what works and what doesn't. I think his video that he came out with today was really excellent. We talked about thumbnail, all that great stuff, and he's implementing all of it, which is pretty cool. Okay, so blog posts. Hook in the beginning. First paragraph, why does a person need to read this, right? I'm going to look for some examples. I'm going to look for some examples, just so I'm not just talking, but we can actually see this in action. WP Beginner. WP Beginner is a website that's run by a friend of mine. His name is Saeed. And Saeed is awesome. He's probably one of the smartest people I know. And he has some really, really amazing blog posts. And I know it's not just him writing it. He has a team and other people. But I wanted to see exactly how he starts his stuff. And a lot of it is very specific to... Ooh. I saw what happened there. I'm sorry. Why is it doing that? I just noticed on the soundboard what happened. I go here. Okay. I fixed it, and I'm so sorry about that. I saw the red again happen. That's my apologies, but I fixed it now. I saw it come through in the audio when I switched to system, which isn't supposed to happen. Again, I'm sorry. Okay, so we are here on Saeed's website. Now, a lot of his stuff is very informational, like, very search-based, right? How to do this, how to do that, right? So how to fix the error establishing database connection in WordPress. 7 best WordPress plugins, right? So there's a reason. Here is the intro to his blog post. Creating regular backups is the best thing you can do for your website security. Backups give you peace of mind and save you in catastrophic situations such as when your site gets hacked or you accidentally lock yourself out. There are several free and paid WordPress backup plugins, and most of them are fairly easy to use. In this article, we will share the 7 best backup plugins for WordPress. You can't get any better than that. This is so clear when it comes to specifically, I need that. I need Ask First. Is that okay here? And Lincoln asked for some reviews. We're going to do reviews over the weekend. We'll have one more time to do reviews on Saturday, so you'll have to come in then and see if we get lucky. So let's read this again and see how this actually gets us excited about reading this, if this is interesting to us. We're going to break this down. Creating regular WordPress backups is the best thing you can do for website security. So we've got website security as a keyword, WordPress backups is a keyword. Here is the why coming next. Backups give you peace of mind and can save you in catastrophic situations, such as when your site gets hacked or you, again, using the word you, accidentally lock yourself out, right? Sorry, Saynato. So you see how this speaks directly to me. It says you. It helps me relate to the situation and wanting to avoid these situations. Catastrophic situations like when your site gets hacked or you accidentally lock yourself out. And then here is the setup. There are several free and paid WordPress backup plugins. I'm glad that there is free and paid, because an objection I would have is, well, do I have to pay for these things? No, we've already answered this question up front, right? There are several free and paid WordPress backup plugins, and most of them are fairly easy to use. Another objection crushing thing. Oh, well, these are probably really hard to use. No, let's crush it right away. Then in this article, sort of like the I in Tiptoe for video, in this article, we will share the 7 best backup plugins for WordPress. Boom. So clear. And now the pop-up shows up. You see how it didn't show up right away? It showed up after we sort of established ourselves here. Let's find another guide. Let's go 30 legit ways to make money online blogging with WordPress. 30 proven ways to make money online. Interesting how proven is in quotations there, right? So now this one starts by asking a question. And again, my favorite thing to do is to consider, how are other people who are successful doing this? How might I get inspiration from their work? I don't want to obviously copy the same exact words, but I might use the same exact format or structure. So let's look at this one. Are you looking, again, using the word you, And now this starts with a question, which I really like. Are you looking for the top ways to make money online that are not scams? Again, very much driven by the objection crushing thing. Oh, anything making money online? Probably a scam. Oh, let's just address that right up front. Are you looking for the top ways to make money online that are not scams? WordPress is the largest publishing platform on the planet, and it powers over 30% of all websites. So a little bit of stats there showing a little bit of proof about what we're about to talk about. You can use WordPress and blogging to earn money online by doing what you love. You can work from home at your own time, and there's no limit on how much money you can make. In this article, we will share top proven ways to make money online blogging with WordPress. So again, very much using the words you, very much something that helps us understand what is to come if we were to implement this. It doesn't feel like it overpromises. It doesn't hype it up so well. It just gets right into it and tells us exactly what this is about. But again, it hooked us in the beginning in two ways. It crushed the objections, right? Not scams. And again, supporting WordPress, the fact that it powers 30% of the world's websites, which is insane. And you can use WordPress and blogging to earn money, et cetera, et cetera. And then coming down here, and I like how it just gets into, first, these aren't get-rich-quick schemes. If you're looking for a way to get rich quick by making money online, then you're in the wrong place. So very upfront, you can be a little bit, it is, this could be perceived as a little bit like, okay, this is far-fetched a little bit, but then it kind of just dispels that. Again, word of warning, probably for anybody who was like, that sounds too good to be true. Well, yeah, in many cases, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, and you can go it there. You can do it there, right? So I love WP Beginner, and I think that's an amazing website. Now, what happened there? What did we just see? We just saw what's called an exit intent pop-up. This showed up only when I was about to leave, which is pretty cool. This is a strategy. And again, WP Beginner, I love to take inspiration from them because they are doing so many things right. They have so many things at play. They're always split testing. The founder, SyncID, also created the tool Opt-in Monster, in case you've heard of that before. But did you see what happened there? I tried to exit the page, and then a pop-up showed up. That, to me, is a lot better than having a pop-up show up right away or having a pop-up show up at a certain time, like 30 seconds in. I might be in the middle of reading an article. I don't want to get interrupted. But if I'm about to leave anyway, I might as well try. If a person's about to leave anyway, you might as well try to capture their email. You might as well, right? You might as well. So that worked out really well. So less on, and again, this website's so fantastic, right? Here's a start here area. Here is where the blog is, deals. It's just, this is not a personality based. It's more of an information based website, but I really enjoy and love what SyncID is doing there, right, in terms of content. So that's blog. That's a good example of blog, especially for those of you who are doing more informational. Try to connect, even if it's a personal story. Maybe the story is about a time you've been scammed. Maybe instead of, hey guys, I was scammed, let's check out this story, which in and of itself is really intriguing and people want to know what happened. But you might say, have you ever been scammed out of $1,000? Well, I can tell you from personal experience based on something that happened last week that it does not feel good. Here's exactly what happened. So again, that connection to a person, having them feel what you're feeling, setting that up front, and understanding, again, how are we hooking people in from the beginning? Now, let's talk about this from a podcast perspective. A podcast is a little bit different because it's usually more longer form content, and you usually have a little bit more room in the beginning. On a blog post, you essentially have the first paragraph, first couple sentences to hook people in, or else they're gone. On a video, you have probably the first 10 or 15 seconds to hook a person in, and if they're not feeling it, they're gone. And it's very easy to leave both those places. On a podcast, however, you have one thing and one thing only. Number one, the only thing, you really have just the title. The title matters so much. That's the click strategy. However, oftentimes with podcasts, our clicks aren't coming from people browsing. They're coming from people who already know and like and trust us, in which case they'll play any episode no matter what the title is. And you have a little bit more room once you start cultivating that community and building those fans, right? That's where you have a lot of leeway to be a little bit more creative and have a little bit more room for more time and setup before the hook in the beginning of a podcast episode. But hopefully word of mouth is helping you, hopefully getting endorsed by another person to go listen to your show. But of course, the titles do matter for sure. There is no algorithm at play, not known yet, at least, like there is on YouTube for podcasting, but I imagine that to come. I imagine that over time, podcasts will have a retention graph. I mean, they already do, but one that plays a role in search and Currently, search is not necessarily how most people are finding podcasts. Again, it's mostly through browse, through word of mouth, and through just, of course, listening to episodes that they're already subscribed to. But within an episode, let's say a person does know who you exist. They are a subscriber. We want people to listen all the way through, because the more that we get people to listen all the way through, the deeper relationship that we're building with them, the more likely it is that they're going to come back, the more likely it is that they're going to share and reach all the call to actions that we have in the middle of that podcast episode. So like I said, you have a little bit more room. You have about a minute. But I want you to imagine a person about to listen to and invest their time into listening to a podcast. What are they about to do? They're about to go on a run, or they might be on a run. They might be about to go to the, to the kitchen to wash dishes, which is when I listen to podcasts. They might be about to go to the gym and they just want to put something on that they can dive into. So you have about a minute while they're getting their gym gear ready, while they're organizing all the dishes and putting them in the sink before they start washing them, while they're getting their shoes on before they go on their run, to hook them in. Because they're going to hit play, but we need to, within the first 30 seconds to 1 minute, convince them to put that phone in their pocket and go on that run, because they're about to listen to something that's worth that time to them. Or to, turn the phone off while listening in the background so that they can go and do the dishes. Because once you got them, it's very unlikely that they're going to go back until the very end when they're ready to start to move on to the next one, right? Or better yet, it just auto plays into the next one, right? So I think that's really, really important. It's just to understand the behavior of people who are listening to podcasts. And again, you have about a minute up front to hook them in. So how do we hook them in? How might we do that? Well, there's a couple ways to go about it. Number one, you can literally just tell them what they're going to get. Very similar to the strategy that we talked about in YouTube. Just get right into it. Hey, in this video, we're going to talk about Facebook ads in 2021, and specifically 5 things that you should do to lower the CPM or the cost per click, the CPC. And you got to make sure you stick around to the end, because I have a very specific strategy that saved us $2 per lead, which over the course of our latest campaign helped save us $15,000. We're going to give it to you for free, and that's going to be here in this episode about Facebook ads or something like that. You just kind of tell them what you're going to get, right? Tell them what you're going to get. So that could be strategy number 1. Strategy number 2 might be to pull out a clip from the middle of the episode. This is something that's pretty unique with a podcast and a video that you cannot do with a blog post necessarily. It's very hard and difficult to manage a middle part of a blog post, putting it in the beginning to tease people and bring people in. And what you could do is take a clip from the middle. It's almost like a TV show or a Netflix episode where they show you a clip about something that's about to happen, and then you go, okay, that's a cliffhanger. I need to listen all the way through. And I've done this a few times on a podcast. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I notice people leave right away because they're just not quite sure. I may be too rambly, or the point doesn't hit home. But when you do get it right, the retention graph is off the charts. So be careful with that strategy, but it can definitely work. And then finally, the other way that I've been able to hook people in is to just go into a story. You have a lot more room to do this in a podcast, where it might take 30 seconds to a minute to get to the punchline, because again, you do have that time, versus trying to do this on a podcast or a blog post or a video. It's not going to work necessarily as well. So starting with starting with the story. When you start with a story, people start removing themselves from, I wonder if I should listen to this episode, to, I need to know what happens in this story. And if they get to the punchline, and then therefore the lesson and the investment too, or the reason why they should invest their time into listening to the rest of the episode, then that can be perfect. So a story would be great too, right? A story could be great too. With a video, it's you got to have, if you're going to tell a story right from the beginning, you got to be very, very good at telling that story. You got to be very good at telling that story. Have some visuals, have some really amazing things that can hold people in, so that they'll be more likely to stick around. Cool. So we just covered the beginning, just the beginning of each of those things, right? The beginning of each of those things. So since we're here on a podcast, let's talk about podcasting and what might happen in the middle of the show and different parts and components, right? So I think it depends on the kind of content, right? I think that overall, you can mix up things. Like I said, I'm not going to even play with that button anymore because I don't want to ruin your ears anymore. But I definitely want to make sure that we can understand that there's different types of things that we can include in a video or a podcast that can almost create pattern interrupts to get people interested. So if you hadn't told a story in like 10 or 15 minutes within a longer form podcast episode, let's bring a story in. A story, yes, can be used to support lessons. Even if it's a blog post or a podcast episode that's like top 5 ways to do this, you can preface each of those lessons or even just 1 or 2 of them with a story. And when you do that, it switches the mode. It gets people to reset. They start imagining themselves in that situation, which can bring home the lesson even more when that punchline comes out. So tell stories. If you haven't been telling stories, try telling a few more stories within your pieces of content, even within your blog post too, right? So that's sort of one thing that you can do. Number 2, you can also include some science or some facts or some case studies, something that is truth that people cannot deny. Obviously, different studies are done differently, and I'm not going to talk about the validity of case studies and things like that. But when you have a case study or some science or some data to go behind the thing that you're talking about, that can be a really refreshing pattern interrupt. And what have we done here? We've talked about stories, which connect with people on an emotional level. We've talked about data and science and studies and other things that, guess what, really impact those who are more on the logical level. You got the left brain, the right brain. And I think this is where you start to get into, well, no matter what kind of person is listening or watching or reading your stuff, you're going to affect them in one way or another. And that piece that connects with them is going to be the thing that they remember and they pull away and justifies the reasons or anything that you're trying to teach, right? So emotion, story, data, or logic, data. So try mixing it up a little bit, even in a specific piece of content. Chris here says there's nothing better than a skilled storyteller. How do you think people became leaders back in the day or even today? They tell great stories. Storytelling is a skill that you should absolutely be always improving, which is why on Friday we have on the wheel an actual storytelling, actually a couple storytelling things on the wheel so that we can just practice that and be reminded of that all the time. I've actually watched a lot of videos about story training. There's so many good videos on YouTube. I spent a whole week watching probably every single how to tell a great story video on YouTube. And that was probably some of the best education I've ever got because it's become very useful all across all the different platforms that I have, which is pretty amazing. Hold on, just checking something real quick. Cool. Little pattern interrupt. Do fun human tricks in the middle of your videos. All right. This is exactly what I do on my podcast. Lots of science and my personal experience. And that takes me to the next thing, Jillian. Thank you for setting that up. Let me give you some credit here. Put your comment here on the broadcast. Your own personal experience. When you talk about something that you've experienced yourself, you just talk about it differently. It becomes more real. And as a result, the listener, the viewer, the reader is going to connect with it a little bit more. This is why when you are promoting products, for example, as an affiliate, you're recommending other products. It works so much better to promote things that you've personally had experience with, not because people are like, okay, you've used that, great, but it's mostly because of the way you talk about it. Now, obviously, people are going to trust you more when you've used it, but when you share it in the way that is genuine and authentic from your own personal experience, that's the best kind of content you can have when it comes to promotion, is stuff that's very genuine and authentic. So thank you, Jillian, for mentioning that, for sure. Empress, Oyanike. Thank you for the kind words. Luke says, in my blog post, I usually start each section with a quote, then explain the idea. Then I use a case study, personal or research. Then I give ways they can apply it themselves. Awesome. It might be interesting to bring that thing at the end, in the beginning a little bit, or actually tease it. Hopefully in the intro, you're talking about the application of it and how relevant it is to the person. And then you can kind of go into the detail of it, right? You kind of like tease it. It's very similar to like in webinars that I do. This applies to webinars too. In the beginning, I resell the idea of what it is that we're talking about. So if I'm doing a podcast about, or if I'm doing a webinar about podcasting and why we should podcast and all that, stuff, and teaching podcasting, I usually resell the idea of podcasting in the beginning. And I actually start with data. The fact that on average, people are subscribed to 7 different podcast episodes. The fact that, more than 60% of people are now subscribed to podcast. The fact that now content on a podcast is consumed way longer than any other form of content right now. That resells it. And then I go into what we're talking about. And I don't say, here's what I'm talking about, here it is. I tease, I let people know. I go, I'm gonna share with you the number one strategy that I use and many of my students are using to grow their show exponentially. I'm also gonna share with you how to rank high in Apple and Google Podcasts. And finally, I'm also gonna share with you the number one podcast episode that I ever created that was the most profitable and actually accounted for over $150,000 worth of sales. And I'll mention that when we start talking about monetization near the end. And that gets people to go, wow, I need to know what those things are. What podcast episode was that? What's that ninja trick that you're using? How do you rank high in Apple Podcasts? I need to stick around. So by sharing those things up front, and again, the why behind that, we want to rank high so that we get listeners coming in on autopilot. We want to have our podcast begin to pay for itself and more, and actually potentially create a business about this thing that we're talking about so that you can have some more freedom in your life, right? So having the why and the benefits behind that too can go a very, very long way. Yeah, I flip it around a lot, says Luke. I had to do it that way at first to memorize those pieces of each section, but now that I have experience, it can be more fluid. Yeah, and the more you do this, the more fluid you will become, just like here on the income stream. Just you start to get a little bit more comfortable. I still get nervous still, even after 359 days. I still take a deep breath before I hit publish and broadcast, but this is the way we go about it. Hello, Miss Boyce. Good to see you. Thank you for being here, as always. Okay, so let's talk about videos now. What can we do in the middle of a video? Well, sometimes interrupting and having segments. This works in a podcast as well. Having segments, right? So almost like purposeful interruptions to do something separate. So I take a lot of inspiration from Mr. Beast and how he structures his videos because he does take a very scientific approach to it. I know that he's obsessed with the numbers. So I see his research actually now portrayed in his videos. And in many of his videos, he'll actually, around the 3 to 5 minute mark, have a completely separate thing, right? It's almost like, remember the Mythbusters? There was the Mythbusters where Adam and Jamie were hosts, but then they had Grant, Corey, Grant, Corey. Oh my gosh, who am I missing? I can't believe I missed. Okay, somebody help me out. Grant, Corey, and the other teammate. They would have their little mini experiments. And I even heard Adam talk about this, where there's an A experiment, the A experiment being the main one that takes maybe 25 minutes of time in that episode. And then the B experiments, there might be 2 or 3 B experiments, which are smaller, which break up the pattern of the big one. And you've noticed, if you've ever watched Mythbusters, you'll know, Carrie, thank you, geez. Carrie was actually one of my favorites. Just escaped me. You stick around to the end because you have to see how that experiment turns out. The A experiment that's set up in the beginning and then it's teased throughout, and the pattern interrupt to go from one thing to another just resets you, right? And then you go back into it and you get re-excited about it again. You can do the same thing with your podcast and your YouTube videos too. So I think that can go a very, very long way. Hold on, Jarvis is... You okay, Jarvis? Come here. I think you heard mommy come back from her run. Cool. You good, bud? Okay, you can hang out with us for a while. I know you heard mama. You heard mama. Whoa, that tickles. Okay. My husband is a great storyteller. I guess years of sermons. I call him the human backhoe because he can get to the issue so quickly. Not so much small talk. Yeah, I mean, I think especially for podcasts, I notice a lot of podcasts that just kind of start with a lot of small talk, and small talk's okay. But let's get to the point, because people have a decision, and the decision might be to leave and find something else that is going to get to the point. Because honestly, the one thing that people have less of now more than ever, it feels this way at least, is time. And we have to respect the time of our listener or viewer or reader, and we need to get to the point a little bit sooner typically. I'm not saying you need to tell people right away what's going on. We've talked about strategies to actually set people up so that they'll stick around for longer. But there is a little bit of an art to it. And again, over time, man, you are heavy now. Over time, you're going to learn what works and what doesn't. Okay, let me go back to the chat because I lost you. There we go. Jarvis is the boss here. He is the boss here. He likes the income stream. Yes, Elton. Wow says, wow, Luke, every 6 seconds would be a lot of editing. So let's talk about that. This is in regards to YouTube. A lot of you love the conversation we had yesterday about podcasting and YouTube using those things together. It is like people say that there should be some sort of editable thing on the screen, something that you have to edit every 6 seconds or so in order to kind of hold people's attention. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think that's maybe the average, because if you watch some videos from some creators, it's literally every second, zoom in, zoom out, something on the screen, zing, zang, sound effect, etc. It can definitely be, it can definitely be a little bit too much. I think a lot of the kid-specific channels do that quite a bit, and it just gives me a headache. There's a duo, Colin and Devin from Colin's Key. My daughter loves them because they do a lot of fun slime-related things and challenges and whatnot. But I can't stand watching their videos because every second is like a zoom in, zoom out, screen effect, something happens. Have you looked into primal branding for storytelling? Yeah, an absolute crazy, epic book for sure. Goes back to sort of like cavemen and cavewomen days, and how humans, we are just a species who wants to belong to a group and a community, and how we can, with our branding, sort of incite that community element and get that feel. Definitely read that book and was inspired by it for sure. I think Tim Schmoyer recommends that book for anybody who's on YouTube. Again, that's called Primal Branding. Cool. So I don't think you necessarily need to pattern interrupt every 6 seconds or zoom in, but there are some strategies. Actually, one of my favorite things that my editor does is when I'm in the middle of like a story, right? And there's a little bit of a setup. It might take 30 seconds, a minute to get there. What happens is he slow zooms in, so slow that you don't even notice it really. And then by the punchline or by the end of it, it's like cropped a little bit closer to my face. And then the pattern interrupt is just whoosh, back to normal ratio. And that's a nice, smooth, easy way to have some sort of moment that kind of connects to another thing. The cool thing about that is you can, if you're gonna do jump cuts, it's a great way to not make it seem like it's just like cutting from one scene to the next just to edit out mistakes, but it actually slows zoom in. When you zoom back out, it doesn't feel like you're just removing things in the middle that were mistakes. It just, here's the next point. So I really like that. It makes me want to use the surprise thing again, but I'm very afraid to do that. The audio here was not very audio-tastic. I apologize about that earlier. I kind of like hurt people's ears, and hopefully didn't blow them away. Cool. So different segments within podcasts and videos can go a very long way. It could be even something like a sponsorship segment, just kind of right in the middle and trying to organically place it in there. I know, for example, that the Social Media Marketing Podcast with Michael Stelzner, he has a segment where he talks about like a tool of the week. And that's pretty cool because those recurring segments can be things that people will, can get used to, can look forward to, which goes a very long way. I think that what's neat is those segments can then be kind of taken out and put into their own resource page or their own video, right? That could be really interesting. So get creative. Don't feel like you have to stick to the same thing every single time, because I think that we can always improve. We can always add a few more shadows and brushstrokes to the canvas, if you will. And since you're going to be continuing to create, you always have new canvases to sort of paint on and try new things with. So definitely feel like that's really important. Creating some sort of interrupts or movement, especially on video. Now, finally, let's talk about the end. Now, how do we end these different pieces of content? Let's talk about a blog first. A person reads our blog post, they're hooked in, they come across the different points in the article, they might see some story, they might see some case studies and some science and maybe a quote here or there, especially if you're on Luke's blog. And then they come to the end. What should happen? Well, number one, on a blog specifically, you have an option that people on video and especially people on podcasting don't have, which is the ability for people to literally engage and comment right away in a place where they're likely already available to do that, right? So I love to, on a blog at least, have people give a reason to leave a comment, because the more people engage, the more social proof there is for that post, which means anybody new who comes in sees there's a community or at least some activity there and will want to more likely at least stick around or at least know they're not alone here. Number 2, that does provide signals for Google. It's one of the probably millions of different touch points and variables that they look at as far as what content should rank where and how. But having some engagement, especially on a blog post, can go a very long way. Now, that being said, when you open up blog posts, unfortunately, or when you open up blog comments, you can attract a lot of spam. And on Smart Passive Income, we actually turned off blog post comments recently because we were just receiving so much spam, and that's just unfortunate. Now, there are other forms of engagement like sharing or tweeting or sending you a message or something like that. That can go a very long way too. But here's the number one thing I would want you to consider people doing after they read a blog post. That is, click to go read another blog post, right? Like that's what it should be, or subscribe to an email list. If there is a lead magnet or something that relates to that, that can go a very long way. So hey, we just have a few minutes left, and I'm going to end in about 5 minutes because I have to prepare for 4 straight calls of Ask Pat for the Ask Pat podcast. Remember how I talked about Tuesday was my recording day, and we're recording 4 episodes of Ask Pat, which is a whole month's worth within the next 2 hours, which is cool. So that's batch processing for you. That's what it can do. So at the end of a blog post, 2 things. There should be one thing that that was a cute yawn. I'm a fan of having one thing for a person to do after they consume something, rather than like with podcast episodes. Sometimes I listen and they're like, "Hey, do these 8 things." I'm like, "I'm on a run. I can't remember all this, and I don't care." Versus like, "Hey, this one thing that you need right now, like go and get it." If I'm in the middle of a run and that's that important, I'm going to stop and do that one thing, right? But I'm not going to stop to follow on Instagram. I'm not going to stop to leave a review. I'm not going to stop to do all these things. If there's just one thing that I can remember and go do that's relevant, then I'll go do that. But with a blog post, having people click to the next page can be great because pages per visit for a user is pretty important, right? That's pretty important. On a podcast episode, what do we want people to do? I think that you can mix it up, but I think that, again, part of the challenge of podcasting is to get people from the podcast to an email list, and that is something I would definitely try to focus on. Having a lead magnet, something to give people a reason to go visit a web page, to go and leave their email so that they get something in return, something related to what it is that you talked about is ideal. That's called a content upgrade. If not, then having a call to action to share the podcast. Word of mouth is absolutely key. And so hopefully if it was something that is share worthy, you can just encourage people to share it after that, because that's how they bring people in. A recommendation from a friend is so much more valuable than a recommendation from you, the creator, him or herself. And that goes a long way. So you can mix it up though. Maybe it is to follow you on Instagram. Maybe it is to leave a review, but one call to action other than subscribe. Having people subscribe to your podcast is very important. So mention that every time. It's okay that you mention it. It should just take literally 1 or 2 seconds where it's not a bother to people who are already subscribed. But it's very important for people to subscribe. That plus one other call to action can go a very long way. And then finally, and oh yeah, if you liked it, that like button, let's see if we can get to 1,000 before we finish up on this last point here. Thank you again. If you've been enjoying this, I hope that you can do that. It's a small, quick, easy way to support the channel. Finally, let's talk about YouTube. A lot of you are here because of YouTube, obviously. How do we end a YouTube video? We want to end without telling people it's the end. This has been working so well. I've noticed Squeaks have been doing this. I've been doing this recently in videos. When you don't set up the fact that your video is ending, it's more likely people will get to the end and all the way through to see all your call to actions and to get to that end card. Getting more people to click on that end card is amazing. If you can set it up so that the next video to click on is right here and you kind of like lead into it without giving people an understanding that, hey, okay, now that we finished talking, let's talk for another minute. By the way, that's a signal for people to leave before they get to the end. Let's not do that. Let's make it so that it just blends into the end and they're ready to watch the next video. Because if you get people to go from one video to the next, that means so much to YouTube. YouTube wants people to stick around on YouTube. And again, if you click that end screen, it goes to another video that hooks people in, which goes to another video, your channel is going to explode. Those videos will get way more views and impressions, and that goes a very long way, right? Did I say 1,000? Let's get to 1,000. Let's shoot high. And if we get to like, let's get to 100 if we can. Triple liked, thank you. Like walking out the door while you're still talking and they are leaning in to hear as you fade off. Thank you so much for coming in today. No, not quite like that. But yeah. Don't even say if you're on your fifth and final point in a video that has 5 things, don't even say, okay, and fifth and finally to round out this video, don't even say that. Just go, okay, and number 5, this is this. All right, thank you so much. If you want to learn more about tips for YouTube, click on this video right here. That's what you should be watching next. Boom, they click on that. Check out how many videos people are watching per visit, per session. We have on Deep Pocket Monster, I think 2.5 videos per session. There's a reason why it's growing so big right now, because YouTube sees that we are helping them, because YouTube wants people to stick around on YouTube. It's doing that, and we're getting rewarded for it. So, whew. All right. Thank you so much for today. I appreciate you. We are very close to 100, which is pretty amazing. So anyway, even if we don't get there, I appreciate you. 88, though. I see 88, and that's my favorite number, because 88 miles per hour. Anyway, thank you so much for today. I appreciate you for your time and attention, and Jarvis down here appreciates you as well. And he is my puppy. If you're coming in late, there's Jarvis. Give him a like if you can. Anyway, thank you for today. If you came in late, please rewatch the video as soon as it's done processing, because some really important stuff here in terms of how you can take a piece of content, break it up, and create different segments so it's a little bit easier to create and it's a lot easier to consume. Thank you again. And tomorrow we're going to be going live. When are we going live tomorrow? Tomorrow we are going live at, it looks like it's going to be 11 a.m. Pacific. 11 a.m. Pacific tomorrow. So 11 a.m. Pacific, that's going to be 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, Wednesday, March 10th. Thank you. I'll see you here then. And thank you. Keep up the good work. Take care. And as always, Team Flynn for the win.
This is the income stream to help you achieve your dream. All while we keep it clean. This is the income stream. It's the kind of show where you
Thumbs down.
come and go.
Hey, I hope you have a better day.
Leave inspired with no fee required. The income stream with Pat Flynn.
All right, thank you again so much for all the support and love. We are on our way to day 365. Remember, on Monday from 9 a.m. Pacific to 3:05 p.m. Eastern for 365 minutes, we're going live next Monday. Looking forward to hanging out, doing some giveaways, fun prizes. Mark your calendars. I'll have a wait room set up for that very soon. Take care. Peace out. You're awesome.
Bruh.